And joining us here in the studio to go through some of those standout stories for us is talkSPORT's very own Molly Sumpter. How are you, Molly?
Hi, Molly.
I'm good. I mean, as a Spurs fan, not
anxious,
not amazing at the moment. Yeah, you're feeling those pre-game nerves already, and it's only Wolves. So say only Wolves.
Only Wolves.
Only Wolves.
I'm there today, Molly. I'm going there today. So it's going to be a strange one because they're, they counter brilliantly well and with pace. And I think with Larson that leads the line, and then you have someone like Cunha driving from midfield, couple of big results behind them.
They really seem to have picked up that new manager bounce, haven't they?
Yeah.
I mean, I watched them against Manchester United the other day, and they were a team transformed, really. So we're going to start off in the Daily Star looking at Spurs, and the former Spurs winger Andros Townsend has done a piece in there for us today. It's entitled Postman Delivered, a nice pun from him there. He's really backed Ange in this article as being the Spurfect fit for the North London job. Brilliant, isn't he? And he's adamant it would be a massive mistake should Levy choose to go down a different direction, get rid of Ange, bring someone else in. And he says the consistency is not there, but I think the consistency in how they dominate games and how attacking they are is there. Now, he also points towards the significant number of injuries Spurs are facing, which is funny because there's a piece in The Sun where Brennan Johnson has said that the injury crisis is really no excuse for Spurs. So how long do you think Spurs fans give Ange, and how long do you give him, the benefit of the doubt of there being so many injuries at the moment?
Well, I don't buy into the injury crisis. I think 2 centre-halves and a keeper, and that's it. After that, you could probably argue that they got their best players in all positions. Now, the 2 centre-halves have been bought for, decent money that are playing, whether it's Gray and Dragerson. The keeper, Forster, worries me. Because I just think he's getting caught so often with the ball at his feet that's worrying and making other concerns for players on the pitch. Certainly the 2 centre-halves have paid a huge price in that. I don't think it's an injury crisis. I don't.
No.
And a crisis is you have 8 players out who are starters.
8.
Go on, Nat. How many would you like at Brentford? Brentford talk.
How many would I like? I'd like 2 injured. We've got 11. So, and they are actually all first. There probably would be, you'd probably accumulate all of them together and it would be our first 11 essentially, roughly, but a couple of here and there. Our injured 11 probably could beat our first 11 currently, put it that way. So, yes, in terms of a crisis, it's nowhere near what other clubs are going through. But that being said, when you're missing some key personnel, like we've mentioned already, the centre-halves, that is a big blow because, your defence, that relationship you have with the keeper and the...
I'll ask Molly
really
this
important.
as well, who you obviously watch Spurs week in, week out, is that Tottenham have... I mean, I've seen them 3 times and they've been pretty good in all the 3 times I've seen them. But there's been games where you go, the style is the problem. It's not just falls on the 2 centre-halves. Because with Van der Ven and Romero in there, you still had these problems. You had them last season. At the end of last season, you were shedding goals for fun.
Yeah. I mean, don't get me wrong. I think these injuries, they have such a knock-on effect on every way we play. You mentioned there about Forster struggling with the ball at his feet, and the way that Spurs like to play is coming out of the back. And when you've got that weakness in both the goalkeeping positions and in defence, that then becomes a problem for all of the rest of the team. I think I'd point towards the Chelsea game, which frustrated me because we've gone 2-0 up. It was brilliant. But equally, looking at our squad and that defence again, we're not a team that can defend against Chelsea for the remainder of that game and see it out. So I can understand where he's coming from, but I think it's also why it's worked so well when we've played against City, because that's the games where Ange has been slightly more tactically flexible. And that's why it seems to work. So that's what I'd like to see a little bit more from him. But I'm definitely not in the camp of getting him out at all.
No.
But I know what you mean. I think when you're so set on a way that you play, like you were mentioning there with Vicario in goal, and when you have your first 11 available, when you then suddenly have to plug holes because of the injury issues, there is sometimes, and a player maybe like Fraser Forster isn't as comfortable on the ball, there is a lack of confidence, a trust issue that starts to come in that maybe seeps through the rest of the team because they're not sure how certain players are going to cope with this style of play. So like you say, maybe there has to be a bit more flexibility with it all. That is a 3 o'clock kickoff between Tottenham and Wolves. Tomorrow night, Manchester United, live on talkSPORT, host Newcastle. Kicks off at 8 at Old Trafford. A few articles on them today.
Yeah, one particularly in The Times from Martin Samuel saying Amorim sticking to his style has made Manchester United worse. He says in this piece, the reality is Amorim has talked a much better game than his team have played. He mentions how under Amorim they have a clear shape, a clear style than under Ten Hag. But ultimately, the results under Ten Hag were better. They were grinding out those results. Now, I think the biggest question we've got here with Amorim is it too early to be casting our judgment on him? And what does he really need to do to change things around at Manchester United?
Well, that's when windows and transfers and who you bring in, the type of player that fit the way you want to play. This is so early on that, and Martin's, Martin Samuel's right that they have looked worse. It's not, it's really weird watching Manchester United because they lack so many things of the qualities. We all get nostalgic. People from my generation look back on what they were. They're miles off of that. The only thing is there seems to be a hell-bent way of management now that we stick with what we totally believe in. Well, I've always felt the very best can adapt at times. And it doesn't mean wholesale changes and it doesn't mean massive differences in formation, but little tweaks here and there were one of the things that managers did regularly to make teams more effective against certain opposition.
Well, something you said yesterday when we were talking about Manchester United and Ruben Amorim is that he's not had a lot of time to work on the training ground because the games
zero time, basically.
The schedule is so relentless currently, and it probably won't be until nearer March when the first international break of 2025 kicks in, probably when he'll have a time to really sit down with anyone that's still remaining, obviously, within that United squad.
Look, and just make a little point on this. When we look at, I'm certainly put Brighton in it, but they have been in Europe. But when we look at Bournemouth, Fulham as two examples of teams flying well, Forest, no European football, way less games and more preparation time. Preparation's really important.
Absolutely.
And if you talk about the resurgence of Everton had a game called off against Liverpool as well. I talked about it from a Liverpool's perspective. Everton had that game off, didn't they? As well, they had a bit more time. I remember Everton had about 10 days period at one time where you could see that the manager had been on the training ground working relentlessly with his team. Now, I don't know that's fact, but what I'm seeing on the football field is a manager having a bit more time because the performances have shown it.
So going back onto what Martin Samuel says about sticking to his style, when you're a new manager coming in with this idea of how you want your team to play, is it more you should implement it slowly but surely rather than this is what we're going to do? When if you don't, have the personnel to do it, which might be the issue with Manchester United, because they're not his players. So it's going to take time for him to get that across to them. So is it more, should it be more of a case when a manager comes in that, yes, of course you want your own style, and we might see like a difference with Southampton, for example, who might go more direct under their new manager, but maybe they have the players that can do that better than playing out from the back, which Russell Martin's team was struggling with.
I don't think you can give away points if you're a team at the wrong end of the table and have been promoted and think you can take on the big boys in a way of playing. I think that in itself is difficult. So I think you have to think outside the box. If you're a manager of a team that's come up, I think bigger clubs have bigger squads and a quality of youngster that can come in. So they have advantages, bigger clubs. So, it can be time sometimes, Nat, but you can't just keep doing the same mistakes. If it's costing you games and on a regular basis, you'll end up losing your fans and your fans will get frustrated. And then you'll get, imagine, we go slightly back to Spurs. Imagine Spurs lose at home today to Wolves. What do you think it'll be like?
Don't imagine it, Molly, don't.
I don't want to think about it.
But you know it's going to be... and the radio phone-ins will go great. Yeah, and there'll be complaint. And the guy's been there a year and a bit. Nuno got Tottenham less than 4 months. Yeah, 4 months.
Yeah.
But they didn't buy into immediately.
Look at how he's done with Forest now. It's that, if you look back in hindsight that managers Spurs have had, it's just ridiculous, really.
Time on the training ground is so important for coaches and managers. It's just so important. And you've seen, I mentioned 3 teams there of Fulham, Bournemouth and Nottingham Forest of how they've done so well. They get 3 weeks at times to work with their team. And you can see it's a clear advantage.
On AM, on DAB, via the talkSPORT app and on your smart speaker. talkSPORT.